The night was cold and dark. Rain kept falling, washing the empty streets of the city. Most people were home, safe and warm. But one man sat alone in his black car, watching the world through the wet glass. His name was David, a millionaire who owned half the city. Expensive watch, perfect suit, powerful car, he had everything. Everything. Except peace. Every night he drove around the streets, as if looking for something he had lost long ago. No one knew what haunted him. He smiled in public, but when he was alone, his eyes were full of sadness. That night, as his car stopped near a small bakery, David saw someone sitting by the door, a woman, covered in an old blanket, feeding crumbs of bread to two stray dogs. Her clothes were dirty, her face tired, but her eyes looked kind. The sight made David pause. For some reason, he couldn't look away. He lowered the window and watched her. Rain dripped from the edge of her blanket, but she didn't move. Instead, she tore her last piece of bread into two and gave it to the dogs. Then she smiled softly and whispered, "You need it more than me." Something inside David's heart twisted. A woman with nothing, still sharing what little she had? He turned off the car engine and stepped out into the rain. The sound of his shoes splashing in water made the woman look up. "Scared?" "Hey," David said gently. "You'll catch a cold out here." She didn't answer. She looked at him, then at his car. It was clear she thought he was another rich man trying to show pity. "I'm fine," she whispered. "Please, just go." But David didn't go. He took off his coat and placed it on her shoulders. "It's not safe to stay here," he said softly. "There is a cafe nearby. Come inside. Have some food." "Us!" The woman hesitated. "Why?" she asked. "Why do you care?" For a moment, David didn't know what to say. Maybe because he was tired of his own loneliness. Maybe because her kindness reminded him of someone he had lost. He said quietly, "Because I want to." After a long pause, she nodded slowly. Together, they walked to a small 24-hour cafe. The waiter looked surprised to see a homeless woman sitting with a man in a $1,000 suit. But David didn't care. He ordered food, soup, bread, tea, and watched as the woman ate like she hadn't eaten in days. When she was done, he asked, "What's your name?" "Lena," she said softly. "I used to be a nurse. Lost my job, lost my home. Life just changed." David nodded slowly. "I'm sorry," he said. She smiled weakly. "Don't be. There are worse stories than mine." They sat in silence for a moment. The rain outside grew heavier. Then David leaned forward, his voice low and serious. "Lena," he said, "I want to offer you something." She looked at him carefully. "An offer? What kind of offer?" David's expression didn't change. He pulled out his wallet and placed it on the table, but he didn't touch the money. "It's not about this," he said. "It's something different." Lena frowned. "If you're trying to know," he interrupted quickly, "it's not like that." He took a deep breath. "I need your help. Something only you can do." Her heart started beating fast. "What kind of help?" David looked straight into her eyes. For the first time, his voice broke a little. "I'll pay you," he said slowly, "but not for what you think." Lena froze. The cafe felt silent. Only the rain spoke now. She whispered, "What do you mean?" David didn't answer right away. He looked out the window, at the rain sliding down the glass. Finally, he said in a low, heavy voice, "I need someone to have my child." Lena's eyes widened. She couldn't speak. Her spoon slipped from her hand and fell onto the floor with a soft clang. The camera could fade to black here. The sound of thunder echoing outside, and the narrator's voice could whisper, "That night, one strange offer changed to lives forever." Asterisk, for a long moment, Lena sat frozen. The words she had just heard felt unreal. Have my child. Her mind refused to believe what David had said. She stared at him, waiting for him to laugh, to say it was a joke. But he didn't. He just sat there, his eyes heavy, his hands shaking slightly as he held his cup of coffee. Outside, thunder rolled again, like the sky itself wanted to know the answer. Lena finally found her voice. "You can't be serious," she whispered. David looked at her, his eyes calm but sad. I am, he said softly, completely serious. Lena pushed her chair back. This is crazy. You don't even know me. I know enough, David replied quietly. He sighed and rubbed his temples. I know you're kind. I saw you feed dogs while you were starving yourself. I know you're not greedy. That's enough for me. Lena frowned, her voice trembling. But why me? You could have any woman in the world. Someone rich, beautiful, healthy. Why choose someone like me? David took a deep breath. His eyes dropped to the table. Because I'm tired, he said slowly. Tired of fake smiles, of people who only want my money. I lost my wife 5 years ago. We tried for years to have a child, but it never happened. The treatments, they broke her. And when she died, a part of me died too. His voice cracked slightly, but he continued. I spent years alone. I thought I didn't need anyone. But lately I keep thinking, what's the point of all this? The money, the houses, the cars, if I leave nothing behind? He looked up, straight into her eyes. I don't want to buy love. I just want a child. A part of me to stay when I'm gone. Lena was silent. For the first time, she saw the truth behind his wealth. A man full of pain, guilt, and loneliness. Still, the offer felt impossible. You want me to? Carry your child? She said softly. Yes, David said. I'll make sure you have everything: a house, doctor's care. You'll never struggle again. Lena shook her head slowly. And when the child is born? I'll take care of everything, he said. You'll be free. But I'll make sure you have a life you deserve. The cafe grew quiet again. Only the sound of rain filled the air. Lena's hands trembled as she held her cup. She wanted to run, but something in David's eyes stopped her. There was no evil there, no desire. Just emptiness and hope. Still, she said, I need time to think.
Hey.
David nodded. Take all the time you need. He took out a small card, placed it on the table, and stood up. When you're ready, he said softly, call me. Then he left, leaving behind warmth, confusion, and a storm of thoughts. That night, Lena sat under the same bridge where she slept every day. The rain had stopped, but her heart felt heavier than ever. She looked at the city lights and whispered to herself, why me? Why did he choose me? She remembered the money he offered, a life free of hunger, cold, and fear. But could she really do it? Could she carry someone's child, a stranger's child, for money? Then her thoughts drifted to her past, the days when she was a nurse, when she helped deliver babies, when mothers cried tears of joy. She missed that feeling, the feeling of bringing life into the world. But her own life had become a shadow. Maybe she thought this was a strange chance, a cruel offer, or maybe a new beginning. She closed her eyes and whispered, if I do this, maybe my life can mean something again. The next morning, Lena walked to a payphone near the street corner. Her fingers shook as she dialed the number on the card. The line rang once, twice. Then David's calm voice answered. Hello? Lena took a deep breath. It's me, she said. Lena, there was silence for a second. Then David said softly, have you decided? Lena hesitated, her heart racing. Finally, she whispered, yes, I'll do it. David didn't speak for a moment. Then, quietly, he said, thank you. You just changed both our lives. The camera could zoom out slowly, the city waking up. The sun rising behind the buildings as the narrator says, sometimes, the strangest choices lead to the most unexpected stories. The morning air was cold, but Lena felt fire inside her chest. She had made a decision that would change her life forever. When she said yes to David, she wasn't sure if it was courage or desperation. But now there was no going back. David came to pick her up that same afternoon. For the first time in months, Lena sat inside a clean car, smelling faint perfume and leather seats. She looked out the window as the city passed by, the same streets where she once begged for food. Now, she was heading towards something unknown. David didn't speak much during the drive. He looked focused, careful, like a man walking on glass. Finally, he said, "You're sure about this?" Lena nodded slowly. "I am. I'm doing the right thing." David gave a small, sad smile. Maybe right and wrong depend on why we do something. They reached a quiet neighborhood on the edge of the city. A beautiful white house stood there, tall, peaceful, surrounded by flowers. It didn't look like a place for business. It looked like a place for healing. "This'll be your home," David said softly. Lena's eyes widened. "This no? It's too much." David shook his head. "It's the least I can do. You deserve comfort, safety, after everything you've been through." Inside, everything felt new. Soft carpets, sunlight through big windows, a warm kitchen. Lena touched the walls like she was afraid they would disappear. It had been years since she felt like she belonged somewhere. David called a doctor, a gentlewoman named Dr. Wilson, who explained the medical process. Everything would be clean, safe, and professional. Lena listened quietly, nodding, though her heart was racing. Later, when the doctor left, she sat by the window watching birds on the garden fence. She whispered, "I hope I'm strong enough." Days turned into weeks. The medical process began. David made sure she had healthy food, clothes, and regular checkups. But what surprised Lena most was his kindness. He never treated her like a deal. He treated her like a person. Sometimes they would sit together in the garden during sunset. David would bring 2 cups of tea, and they'd talk about small things. Weather, books, life before the pain. It felt strange. Peaceful. But under that peace, both carried heavy secrets. One evening, Lena asked quietly, "Do you ever think she'd forgive you?" David looked confused. "Who?" "Your wife," Lena said softly. "You said you tried for years to have a child. Maybe she felt pressure. Maybe she wanted love more than anything." David's face darkened. For a moment, he didn't answer. Finally, he whispered, "I think about her every night. I can't change the past. Maybe this is my way of saying sorry." Lena didn't know what to say. She looked at him not as a rich man, but as a broken soul trying to fix himself. Months passed. Lena began to show signs of pregnancy. For the first time in a long time, she felt purpose. Every heartbeat inside her made her feel alive again. David grew gentler, more human. He started smiling again. He would ask, "How's our little one today?" And Lena would laugh, "Probably hungry like me." But there was also something strange. Letters started arriving at David's house. Thick white envelopes with no return name. Each time he received one, he would quietly go to his office and lock the door. When he came out, his face looked pale and sad. Lena noticed but didn't ask. Until one night, she saw him burning one of those letters in the fireplace. She wanted to ask what was wrong, but she stayed silent. Something told her that behind David's calm face, there was a storm waiting to break. One night, as the rain fell softly outside, Lena sat in her room, her hands on her stomach. She whispered, "Little one, you're the reason I'm still here. Maybe you'll bring light to both of us." Downstairs, David stood by the window, staring into the dark. He held another letter in his hand, unopened, but his eyes were wet. He whispered to himself, "Maybe I don't deserve forgiveness, but I can try." The narrator's voice could fade in softly as the music grows emotionally. To strangers. Broken in different ways, now bound by one fragile hope, a child not yet born, and a truth not yet revealed. Rain returned to the city again, just like the night David met Lena. But now, things were different. Lena wasn't a stranger anymore. She was carrying a life inside her. The White House no longer felt strange. It felt alive with quiet laughter, with small moments of hope. Yet behind that peace, something dark still lived, something David never spoke about. The letters kept coming. Every week. The mailman delivered one, same size, same handwriting, no name. David always took them to his office, locked the door, and came out later with the same tired eyes. He said they were business letters, but his face told another story. Lena noticed everything. She didn't ask at first. She didn't want to seem ungrateful or curious. But her heart told her the truth. Those letters weren't about business. They were about her, or maybe about the child. One afternoon, when David went out for a meeting, curiosity got the better of her. She walked slowly toward his office. The door was slightly open. Inside, the room smelled of burnt paper and old memories. On the desk, under a glass of water, lay a torn piece of a letter. The words were half burnt, but she could still read them. You can't fix what you destroyed. Stop trying to buy forgiveness. She would hate what you're doing. Lena froze. Her fingers trembled as she read the words again. She would hate what you're doing. Who was she? His wife. A sudden chill ran through her. Her mind filled with questions. Was this about his wife? Was he using her to heal his guilt? That evening, when David came home, she tried to act normal. But her eyes couldn't lie. Is something wrong? He asked gently. Lena smiled weakly. No, I'm fine. He looked at her for a long time as if he knew she was hiding something. But he said nothing. Days passed, but the thought wouldn't leave her mind. One morning, while cleaning the study, she found a small wooden box on the top shelf. Inside it were photographs of a smiling woman with golden hair standing beside David. They looked happy. But as Lena flipped through them, she noticed something that made her stop. In one picture, the woman was sitting on a hospital bed. Her smile looked weak, her eyes tired, and behind her, on the wall, hung a medical report. The words were blurry, but one word stood out. Complications. Tears filled Lena's eyes. She finally understood. David's wife hadn't just died, she had suffered. And maybe it was because of David's obsession to have a child. That night when David came home, she couldn't stay silent anymore. Why didn't you tell me? She asked. He looked confused. Tell you what? About her, Lena said. Your wife. About what happened to her. David's face turned pale. You went into my office? Lena nodded. I didn't mean to, I found the letters, the photos. She took a deep breath. You said this was about starting new? But it's not, is it? It's about guilt. David sat down, covering his face with his hands. When he finally spoke, his voice broke. You're right, he whispered. It is guilt. He looked up, eyes red. I pushed her too hard. We tried everything. Treatments, doctors, medicines. She was weak, but I couldn't stop. I wanted a child so badly. I didn't see what it was doing to her. And then one night, she was gone. Lena's tears fell silently. David continued. Her sister blames me. She's the one sending those letters. Maybe she's right. Maybe I am trying to fix the past through you. Silence filled the room. The rain outside hit the windows like small knives. Lena looked at him, not with anger, but with sorrow. You can't buy forgiveness, she whispered. Not with money, not with a child. David nodded slowly. I know, but maybe. Maybe I can still do one good thing before I die. That night, Lena sat awake, her hand resting on her belly. She thought of the life growing inside her, innocent, pure, unaware of all this pain. She whispered, You didn't ask to be part of this, but maybe. You'll bring peace to a broken heart. Downstairs, David stared at the ashes of another burned letter. For the first time, he didn't cry. He just whispered softly, Maybe this time, I'll do it right. The screen could fade to black here, with a soft voiceover. The past doesn't vanish, it hides in silence, waiting to be faced. Days turned into weeks, but the house no longer felt warm. After their confrontation, silence began to live between David and Lena. They still shared the same roof, the same breakfast table, but not the same peace. Every word felt heavy. Every smile felt forced. Lena tried to stay calm for the baby's sake, yet her heart was full of doubt. She wondered if she was just a part of David's search for forgiveness, not a person, not a friend, only a path to erase his guilt. And no matter how much he tried to be kind, she couldn't stop hearing the words from those letters. You can't fix what you destroyed. One morning, David brought her flowers. He said softly, they were her favorite. Lily's Lena forced a smile, but deep down her heart broke a little more. Every good thing he did reminded her that she was just living in someone else's shadow. Someone he couldn't let go. As her due date grew closer, Lena's fear grew stronger. What would happen after the baby was born? Would he take the child away, just like he said at the start? Would she be left alone again, but this time emptier than ever before? At night, when David was asleep, Lena would walk into the baby's room. It was beautiful, soft colors, tiny toys, sunlight through white curtains. But something about it scared her. It felt perfect, too perfect. Like a dream built on someone else's pain. She touched the crib and whispered, "Won't let you be a part of someone's guilt. You deserve love, not sorrow." A few weeks later, Lena received a small envelope slipped under her door. No name, just one line written in neat handwriting. "He will never change. Run before he takes everything." Her hands shook. Was it from David's wife's sister? How did she know where Lena was? She looked out the window, but saw no one. Still, those words echoed in her mind like thunder. That night, she packed a small bag, some clothes, a bit of money David had given her for groceries, and the baby's medical papers. She stood by the door, crying quietly. She wanted to leave, but something held her back, the kindness he had shown her. The way he always brought her tea, the way his eyes softened when she smiled. But then she remembered the letters, the guilt, the pain, and she whispered, "I can't live as someone's mistake." Before dawn, she left. When David woke up, the house was silent, too silent. He called her name. No answer. He checked her room, empty. The blanket was gone. The cupboard open. The phone off. For the first time in years, David felt panic. He searched every street, every shelter, every hospital. But Lena was gone like a ghost that never existed. Days passed. Then weeks. David stopped eating, stopped working. He would drive around the city at night the same way he used to before he met her. Only this time, he wasn't looking for peace. He was looking for forgiveness. One rainy afternoon, almost 3 months later, he received a call from a small clinic on the city's edge. A nurse said softly, "Sir, are you the emergency contact for Miss Lena?" David's heart stopped. "Yes," he whispered. "Please come quickly," the nurse said. "She's here, and she's very weak." When David entered the clinic, he saw her lying on the bed, pale but peaceful. Beside her was a small crib, a baby boy, wrapped in a white blanket, sleeping quietly. Lena looked up and gave a faint smile. "You found me," she said softly. David's eyes filled with tears. "Why did you leave?" She whispered, "Because I needed to make sure this child was born out of love, not guilt." He held her hand gently. "He's beautiful," he said. Lena smiled weakly.
He is.
"But he doesn't need your money, David. He needs love. Real love." Her voice broke as tears rolled down her face. "I know you've lost a lot, but don't lose him too." David cried silently. "I promise," he said, "I'll never let him feel what I felt, or what you felt." She nodded slowly, her eyes closing. "Good," she whispered. "Then I can rest." The camera could fade as David holds the baby, tears falling on the small blanket. The narrator's voice could echo softly. Sometimes life breaks you to rebuild you. And sometimes forgiveness comes not from words, but from love. Morning sunlight entered the small clinic room through half-open blinds. David sat beside the bed, holding the tiny baby in his arms. The world outside felt still, as if time had paused just for them. Beside him, the bed where Lena had slept was now empty. She was gone. But her warmth lingered in the air, in the baby's breath, and in David's heart. He looked down at the child, tears filling his eyes. The baby yawned softly, his fingers curling around David's thumb. For the first time in years, David smiled, not the kind that hides pain, the kind that heals it. He whispered, "You'll never be alone. I promise." Weeks passed. David buried Lena on a quiet hill covered with wildflowers. No expensive coffin, no marble stone, just a small wooden cross with her name carved by hand. Lena, a heart too kind for this world. Every weekend he came there with the baby, bringing lilies, her favorite. He would sit on the grass, talking to her as if she could still hear him. "I named him Ethan. he would say softly. You'd like that name. It means strong, just like you. Sometimes the wind would blow gently, rustling the flowers, and David would smile through tears. He liked to believe it was her way of answering. Years went by. David became a different man. He sold half of his companies, gave away most of his wealth, started a small foundation for homeless mothers in Lena's name. He called it Lena's Light. The foundation gave shelter, food, and safety to women who had lost everything, just like Lena once had. And every woman who walked through those doors carried her story. The story of a homeless nurse who changed a millionaire's heart. Ethan grew up surrounded by love, not riches, not luxury, but real love. He never knew the pain his father once carried. He only knew kindness. One evening when Ethan was 6, David took him to the hill where Lena rested. The sun was setting, painting the sky gold and pink. Ethan ran ahead, laughing, holding a bunch of lilies. "Dad, look. Flowers for Mom, Lena," he shouted. David smiled and nodded. He still hadn't told Ethan everything, only that Lena was the woman who gave him life and love. They sat by the grave. Yes, the breeze soft against their faces. Ethan placed the flowers and said, "Thank you. Mom, Lena, I love you." David closed his eyes, his heart full. For a moment, he thought he heard her voice in the wind. "He's happy. David, you did it right this time." As they drove home, Ethan asked, "Dad, were you always this kind?" David laughed softly. "No, son. Once I wasn't kind at all. Then who made you kind?" David looked at him through the mirror. "A woman who had nothing, but gave me everything," Ethan smiled, resting his head on the seat. "Then I want to be kind too," he said sleepily. David's eyes glistened. "That's the best thing you could ever be." Years later, when Ethan was grown, Lena's Light had become one of the biggest charities in the city. People spoke about it everywhere, a symbol of hope born from guilt, love, and redemption. David, now old and gentle, spent his evenings sitting in the same garden where he and Lena once drank tea. He would often whisper to himself, if only she could see what her kindness started. On his desk stood a framed photo, a picture of Lena holding a stray dog, smiling under the rain. Beside it, a small note she once wrote before leaving the hospital. "Love is not about owning someone. It's about giving without expecting anything back." David read it every night before closing his eyes. One morning, the sun rose bright and calm. David's housekeeper found him sitting in his chair, peaceful, eyes closed, a faint smile on his lips. The letter in his hand read, "I'm coming home." At his funeral, Ethan stood beside Lena's grave and placed both lilies and roses together. He whispered, "You both taught me what love really means." As the screen fades, the narrator's voice could close the story softly. Money can buy comfort, but not kindness. It took a homeless woman to teach a millionaire that love is the only wealth that never fades.